All right. Hi, friends. I'm here today to talk with you about the yoga of time. My name is Shannon McCall, and I'm a yoga teacher and an Ayurveda practitioner. And I am focusing on working with women in perimenopause and beyond. And so, women somewhere about 38, 39, 40 start to make a slow transition towards menopause where hormone levels start to shift. And it's usually not until maybe 44, 45, sometimes younger than that, sometimes a little older, that women start to miss a cycle or start to experience they might have some hot flashes or have some other symptoms that are telling them that they're on this way towards the big menopausal shift. I love working with women in this perimenopausal time because there's so much that we can benefit from by shoring up our habits, our diet, and our lifestyle now, so that that transition through menopause, sometimes later, maybe 50, maybe 55, can be much smoother. These transitional times are different for every woman, but I'm loving bringing yoga and Ayurveda to you, to women who are already practicing yoga, but maybe want to go deeper in understanding the diet and lifestyle practices, the herbal protocols that Ayurveda has brought to us. And it's brought this to us now for thousands of years. There's just so much beautiful wisdom here. So, the yoga of time, this is a model that we can look at. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Found it earlier. Let me see if I can get into that. Well, I have a kind of a plan too, which is to show you a picture. So, maybe what I'll do is I'm gonna show you an image of what we call the doshic clock. So you can see the yogini in the center, and around her are the three doshas: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So you may know the doshas. I'll talk more about those in a moment. And then you see the clock face, 12 o'clock on top, 6 at the bottom. And then around the clock are the seasons of the year. And then at the top are the months that make up those seasons. And there's some text there that you can't see that is giving the qualities of the different elements that are strong at these different times of day. So, this is a way of understanding elemental prominence throughout the day, also throughout the year, also throughout our lifespan. And this is here's a model, but we all know just from our own experience how different times of day impact us, right? You might be a morning person, you might be an evening person, you might have a lull in the afternoons, right? You might be sharper at certain times of day. So we all have this experience. And then, in terms of the year, right? Certain seasons might be more challenging for you. You might really look forward to the coolness and transitional energy of fall. You might really be all in for the light and the heat of summer, right? You might love the coziness and the darkness of winter. So we have these preferences, and we also those preferences are related to the fact that there's differences, right, in all these different times of day or times of year, or even the different times of our life, from early childhood through adolescence, through young adulthood, middle adulthood, middle age, older age, right? There's different qualities to these life stages. So all of that is what's represented on this clock. And it's a way for us to kind of think about how can I make use of the different energetics of the day? How can I be more intentional in terms of how I use my time? And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about really all month. I want to bring in different aspects of this. Um, I think before all of that, what I'll say is one of the things we see from that image of the clock and the cycles of day and night, the cycle, through the seasons, the cycles of our life stage. We could also talk about the lunar cycle each month. These are what we call, these natural rhythms or these natural cycles. Some of us are more aligned with them and some of us are less aligned with them. So you might be living in a more rural kind of environment. Maybe you have chickens or goats. So you've got to get up in the morning and get the eggs or milk the goats. And even if you have children, there's a certain way that you can be more aligned with some of these natural cycles because you're living them. I mean, if you're living with animals in a rural setting, there's just certain non-negotiables about that, right? Um, However, when we're living in more modern kinds of lives in cities where there aren't so many non-negotiables, it's like, okay, well, maybe we know we need 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night, but we may not know that there's better times to get that sleep than others, and that there's better times to wake up in, during the day than others. So it's not just any old 8 hours of sleep will do, um, you know, and if you've maybe you live in a city and so you're more connected to the use of more artificial light. I mean, most of us are, right? We can really stay up until all hours. We can eat anytime. We can sleep anytime. We have the capacity. We have access to everything all the time. So we can get disconnected from those natural rhythms. So why does that matter? It matters because our bodies are of nature. They are of the earth. And so our body is, I like to think of our bodies and the way our bodies respond as being more like the way the garden is and the way the garden grows. And so as I say that, right, I start to slow down in even how I'm expressing myself because, right, there's a certain speed that is with us in modern life. And there's a certain kind of stimulation, a gross and a subtle stimulation that's part of our modern life. It's part of being able to do anything at any time, right? And as soon as I even said the garden, invoke this image of the garden, there's kind of this felt sense of the pace of the garden, right? The pace of the garden is so different, right? There's seasons for when things grow. There's time when the garden lies fallow. We have to amend the soil. Everything has its season of the right time it grows. We can't rush the pace of the garden, and our bodies are really more like that than not. So even though our minds are very speeded up and complex, and there's this kind of multitasking that's going on all the time, the impact of all of that on our body is actually at the root of a lot of our problems, a lot of the ways that our system breaks down physically and psychologically. Has to do with this speed and this stimulation that we're all encountering all the time. So again, maybe you have moved into a more rural life, and if so, that life itself is bringing you into relationship with these natural cycles. But a lot of us, we're living in cities, and so we're having to remember the importance of slowing down and reconnecting to night and day, and that's the circadian rhythm. And what's really interesting is that Ayurveda has been talking about the importance of dinacharya, which means daily rhythm, for centuries, and this is foundational to how we take care of ourselves, is really understanding the rhythms of night and day and aligning with them when we eat, when we sleep, when we wake, when we're the most active, when we have our biggest meal, etc. And when we get separated from those natural rhythms, things start to break down. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. There's been a lot of research recently into what's called circadian medicine. And the research has really borne out these teachings of Ayurveda, showing that, oh, yeah, it really does matter whether we sleep at night or during the day. Oh, yeah, it actually does matter that we go to bed and we're not heavy trying to digest food. That there's a better use of our metabolic energy at night when we're sleeping than trying to digest food. So the earlier, lighter dinner, much better, right? Um, oh, yeah, it really does matter, that we get up in the morning and things like that. So it's wonderful to see, the scientific research that really is validating some of this stuff, because I think it helps. It helps our intellectual minds when we can see that there is some real science behind this. What I like to remind people of is, if you're not living in a more rural community, if you just remember the last time you went camping. So maybe in your normal life, you think of yourself as like a late night person, and I get my best ideas at night. I love to stay up at night and I love to sleep in, and that's working really well for me. But if you go camping, most people, when they're camping, right, there's a tendency to go to bed earlier because, right, the sun goes down, you make the fire, you sit out with the campfire and sing for a little while, or roast your marshmallows, or have your hot cup, and then it's just natural. The stars come out, it's so beautiful, and then it's just natural to go to bed. And then, the light comes up in the morning, and you find yourself getting up earlier than you normally do, and it's like that. The refreshing beauty of that early light is so amazing, and so people have these experiences camping, that this kind of the ecstasy of being in relationship with just a natural cycle like that, the dawning of the day, and the magic of night, and actually sleeping soon after the sun sets, and waking, even before the sun rises, in that early time when the sky is starting to light up, and maybe even you see the stars set and the moon set, and it feels like, it's just kind of magic. So even though sometimes we think of ourselves as night people, or this schedule actually works for me to stay up late and sleep in, I would challenge you to check in with that. So Ayurveda, one of the rhythms that, hi Robert, thanks. Yeah, the impact of circadian rhythms on physiology is very underappreciated. Yeah, totally. And usually, like I said, we can get back to just having an experience out in nature to really see and remember really how these things impact us. So I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but so one of the things I wanted to start off by saying is just that rhythm is important. Rhythm in general is important, right? So uh, there can be a kind of randomness to how we live sometimes, where, we eat whenever we can catch our meal. Like, say, you've got a busy job, and so you don't stop for lunch, you don't feed your body when it's hungry. You might not have time to pee or drink water when you're thirsty, right? So there can be a kind of randomness to how we live. Maybe I go to bed at 9, but maybe I go to bed at 11. Maybe I'm up at 7, but maybe I sleep until 9. Maybe I have lunch, maybe I don't, right? And that irregularity in when we attend to those basic functions of rest and digest and eliminate and hydrate, that in itself can throw things off in such a dramatic way. And I mean, I worked with a woman once who stopped menstruating. She had plenty of weight on her. It wasn't that she wasn't She didn't have enough substance to menstruate, but she wasn't eating. She was not eating for long periods during the day, and she would eat finally at night. And we just got the lunchtime going for her again. And within a couple of months, her period came back. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic story. Um, so the very first thing is to start to just bring rhythm back. So if you're somebody that is going to bed at different times, waking up at different times, it's really good to just settle in on a bedtime. And we recommend in Ayurveda to go to bed by 10 o'clock. The clock time is arbitrary, right? And the clock time is it really has more to do with sunrise and sunset. So it changes throughout the year, of course, right? But um, but somewhere around 10 o'clock, and you can see for yourself when that is. So we say in Ayurveda that sometime after sunset, around 6 o'clock, between 6 and 10, the earth and water elements come to predominate. And the qualities of those elements are very stable and heavy and cohesive. And usually, if we pay attention to how our body's feeling, sometime after supper, sometimes after sun sets, we start to feel that heavy, dense energy. It can come on surprisingly early, right? Be 7 o'clock, and you're like, wow, I'm really exhausted. How do most of us handle that? Most of us push through, right? We push through. We've got things to do or whatever. There's a lot of overriding this natural heavy energy. Well, right around 10 o'clock ish, it can vary a little bit. The fire energy turns on, and that energy is strong between 10 and about 2, both in the day and in the night. And when that fire energy turns on, that's our second wind. That's our second appetite. That's that feeling of like, wow, I like to stay up late because I get really creative. Yeah, after 10, that can happen. And again, the exact time is going to be different for me. It used to be like right around 10:30. If I could get to bed before 10:30, I could sleep easily. If I got to bed after 10:30, no matter how tired I was, I would lie awake for an hour, sometimes more. Now I actually have to get in bed earlier for that to happen. So I'm in a different phase of life, and that has changed for me. So you have to really look at your experience to see what's actually true. But what I see with people and I see with myself is that, if there's a certain window there, and if we push past that, no matter how tired you are, it's going to be hard to fall asleep. Um, an interesting thing is that, during the daytime, that fire energy between about 10 and 2 is the time when we tend to be the most focused, the most sharp with our intellect. We have the best capacity for digesting food. So you may have heard in Ayurveda, we say, have your main meal or your heaviest meal during the day. This is important. At nighttime, if you've had an earlier supper and you're not trying to digest a heavy meal while you sleep, that same fire energy does some cleaning of, in particular, the liver. And this is something else. This is something that Ayurveda teaches, but this is something that some of the research into circadian rhythms also found was that when people go to sleep at night and they're not digesting a late, heavy dinner, the markers for things like blood sugar, healthy markers for liver show up. So there is some kind of metabolic process that wants to happen while we're sleeping during that fire time. So it's good. It's good if we can let that happen, right? It's good for our liver to get some renewal and some rejuvenation during those hours, that we're not staying up burning the candle at both ends or trying to digest a heavy dinner. I'm throwing so many things in because there are so many features, but let me just get back to this basic idea of rhythm and how just getting into rhythm is really important. So that means eating at regular times, sleeping at regular times, getting up at regular times. So I would just want to invite you to look at your schedule right now And there can be irregular rhythm because you might be doing different things, different nights, or your job might differ day to day. But where could you bring in more stability of rhythm? I am starting this series really with the invitation to look at rhythm around bedtime because I really want to talk about the early morning hours. But we can't talk about the early morning hours until we talk about bedtime, right? Because if we're not getting, sleep is vital, and if we're not getting enough hours of sleep, there's no way we're gonna want to get up and enjoy some early morning time. So, what if you paid attention? Two things. One is looking at rhythm overall. Where are you finding some of that scattered rhythm in your life? Are you eating at any old time? Sometimes I have breakfast, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I skip lunch, sometimes I have it. If that's going on, I would love for you to start to establish some regular meal times. Okay. If the irregularity is showing up more around sleep, getting up and going to bed at all different times, I'd love for you to establish a regular bedtime. And any change we make, right, it takes a few days, it takes a week, right, to kind of get into rhythm with it. So just, point yourself in that direction, give yourself a week. Start to pay attention at night to when you are feeling tired. You'll probably be shocked at how early that heavy, dense energy sets in. What would happen if you actually just went with that energy and turned off the TV and did your nighttime hygiene and got in bed? What if you got in bed ridiculously early, like at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? Imagine that. Um, and so we can train ourselves to start to notice and then go with the natural energy, just like we do when we're out in nature more. And if this is something that you're already doing, wonderful, good for you, because there's a lot of rhythms we're going to be looking at over this next month, and this is just the first one. Maybe if this is something, if you're already in basic rhythm with eating and sleeping and waking, you can maybe there's some refinement for you. Maybe you'd like to be going to bed just a little bit earlier. Maybe there's some refinement in these practices you could be looking at this week. So a lot of us have been on this path for a really long time, and so it isn't like we're starting something new. It can be more the refinements, and there's always refinements to make, and it's so beautiful when we're at a place in our practice where it's really about the refinement. And over the course of these lives, I'll be bringing more things in. So the importance of rhythm, it really can't be overemphasized. And you can think about it if you've taken care of pets, taken care of children, taken care of a garden. You know that rhythm, timing is everything. Nothing can grow well if we're just planting seeds whenever, watering whenever. Children completely fall apart, right, when they don't get their nap or they don't get their snack. Animals, right? I mean, there's just a time when they need to be milked, the eggs need to be gathered, and we aren't that different. We think we're different because we think so much and we have these sophisticated brains, but these bodies are like the garden. So maybe I can just leave you with that. So many symptoms that we have, from anxiety to depression to inflammation, so much comes from the lack of rhythm that causes this kind of energetic in our nervous system, right? I'm moving my hands around, this kind of like there's no ground, there's no stability, and that can inflame us. That can bring in a lot of heavy density. It can cause us to lose weight. It can make us feel very unstable, anxious, ungrounded. So just bringing rhythm back, not even talking about the specifics of exactly what we do, can be incredible for starting to bring all of that back down. So In particular for my menopausal and perimenopausal women, this is so critical because perimenopause is a very, it's a slow transition, and that means our body is adapting to this. I mean, our bodies are adapting all the time, but in these particular life passages, there's a certain adaptation that's trying to happen. And the more stability we can bring into our organism in general, the smoother that adaptation is going to be. And a lot of times, the flare up of a lot of symptoms is coming because we don't have that stability. And I know it's not always easy if you're a working mom and you have a partner and you've got a pet and you've got a garden. I mean, there's a lot to take care of. So sometimes, we have to look at, what can I let go of? What can I say no to? How can I simplify so that I can start to bring in more of this stable rhythm? And I'll tell you, I've seen miracles happen for women when they can get on board with this. So, we'll be talking a little bit more next week about the rhythms, and the importance of rhythm, but also like exactly, what kind of energy we can take care of, take advantage of, particularly in the early morning. I want to talk about that. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has sparked some ideas for you. And I hope you will take action in one, two, or maybe three ways that I've talked about today. Looking at rhythm in your own life, looking in particular at evening rhythm, and are you going with that heavy energy in the evenings and letting yourself sleep, or are you overriding that? And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.